Okay, Raylan Brandel,
Present.
Laura Casey,
Here.
Dan Dennehy, Mary McCormick, Cindy Perdue-Dolan, Cindy Shaw, Chad Silk,
Here.
Matt Steppen.
Matt has been excused for tonight.
Okay, thank you. And Ben Thielen. Here. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll take the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer, please. Okay, so our first order of business is public comment on any item on the agenda.
Thank you. Chris Harris, 823 North Excelsior. I just wanted to let you know I'd like to ask the chief executive a question after or during.
So would you give us your question, and then we can put it into the list of questions for the night?
I would rather ask it myself.
Is there any formality with that? I don't know the procedures. That I assume that's kosher for him to do. Yeah.
I believe there's public comment on anything on the agenda or not on the agenda at the end of, so yes, you can do that at 12 and ask your question. Chris. Your mic, please. Oh, sorry.
So,
Well, I thought, didn't we cover this a minute
yeah,
ago?
I'm just asking about if you were going to ask the question or if I should ask the question, if you're going to give that to us. So, yeah, we're fine. So we have 7 questions, and then at the end of our questions, we'll have you come up and give your question.
Very well. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Okay, the next item is the approval of minutes from the meeting on February 24th. Ms. McCormick?
I have a comment, or I guess a point of concern. Excuse me, I was looking at something. On 4A, Bob Worley's presentation, or item 6, address by Bob Worley, I was a little concerned to see that there was no summary of his presentation provided in the minutes. I certainly don't think that we need to have a transcript, word-by-word transcript, but I think our minutes should provide a summary of the high points of presentations that are made before this group, especially considering now that we're getting into this interview section. It's important for us to be able to go back and read the minutes and have kind of a reminder of what was said, and I think it's very important for the public. You know, these minutes are provided for them online, and they should be able to download and just get the high points. It doesn't have to be word by word, but I think starting from here on out, it's critical that the minutes include a summary of all presentations before this board.
Excellent point, Ms. McCormick. Ms. Cohn?
I'll put those in. I thought I did. I meant to, and I think I just didn't go back to that section and add it in. So my apologies for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On item number 12, it's just a spelling, Leary Winstel. Is it spelled W-I-N-S-T-E-L? Winstel? W-I-N-S-T-E-L, Winstel? Yeah, thank you. Larry Winstel, yeah.
Cindy, that was my fault. That was my fault. I wrote it down. Give it to you. I just wanted to spell like I I'm sorry about that.
I-N-S-T-E-L, and the only way I know is he did run for study commissioner, so I looked at my old list, and because I didn't think that looked right, but anyway, thank you.
Ms. Dolan?
Sorry. Thank you, Chair, Madam Chair. Just a quick question with regard to, and thank you, Mary, for talking about item 6. With that, there was an article in the Montana Standard about Bob Worley's presentation. And I thought it might be good to ask the group if we should include any future or current articles and information in our packet for posterity, for history, as part of collecting information, because adding on to that article or any other public information might be beneficial not only for us to look over a year and a half from now, but if for historical purposes. I don't know what avenue we take with that, but I just thought I'd mention it.
Ms. Dolan, are you asking kind of for it to be archived? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, yes, to archive it with our stuff as well, with our collection of documents and information. I don't know if that would be useful or maybe for posterity, but maybe for us as well.
Okay. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Cindy, for that. I agree, but I actually cut it out for myself. I always have this little plastic sleeve I put in articles just for review, you know, because in another few months my short-term memory goes out the window. But I like that idea too as a permanent archive, but just, you know, print it out and put it in a file so I try to keep track of all that myself, just for me.
Ms. Cohn?
I've already started that kind of an archive. Yeah, for newspaper articles, having been an archivist. But I do not have access to the Montana Standard. So if you guys will point out, just say, hey, there was an article. That way I'll know to go back and look for it.
Any other comments on the meeting notes? Okay, so we will need to have this amended, and then we have, there's another misspelling, Kim, on new business. It's just request direction. So, okay. Okay. So with our motion, we need to include that we need an amendment and that, or the corrections, and then we need to add the section that was requested by Ms. McCormick in regards to summarizing Bob's section. So if I could have that motion, please. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve the minutes as amended in adding in the section on Bob Worley's summary and any housekeeping changes as far as misspelling goes.
Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Thielen gives a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, a motion is approved, and we'll move on to our conversation with departments. So thank you, Mr. Gallagher, for being first up, and we understand tonight's a important night in your life, so we'll try to be quick. We did provide you with some questions ahead of time, and then we do have a member of the public who'd like to ask you a question as well. So that will be at the end of those questions. And then our intention here tonight is to, of course, study from your perspective what the role of government should be in our county and what you think your role as the chief executive or the role of chief executive is like. We have this great privilege to be able to study our form of government and how well it works for our citizens every 10 years. And so that's what we're here to do tonight. It's meant to be a dialogue and not meant to be a grilling, if you will. It's meant to be friendly and having a conversation about what works for our students, oh my gosh, our constituency and for our future. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Commissioners, I think it would be wise if maybe we just start with Ms. Casey. You can take the first question, we'll go around, I will skip, and then we'll give our public an opportunity to ask as well. Does that work for everyone?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll start with you, Ms. Casey.
Okay. Mr. Chief Executive, what are the specific governing responsibilities and duties of the Butte-Silver Boat Chief Executive?
Well, thank you, Representative Casey and Madam Chair and representatives. It's my pleasure, first of all, to be here tonight, and I know that here on my anniversary, but I think it's important that the chief executive come forward in front of you guys at a time that you guys requested and be the first one to do that, because I think it shows the importance of what the study commission is tasked with doing. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And so I'll simplify essentially what the charter says and what I see the duties that I do every single day. And so the chief executive is like a mayor, a city manager, and a county administrator all rolled into one. There's a lot of responsibilities that overlap with all of those. I meet with other mayors through the Montana League of Cities and Towns, but I also am part of the city manager caucus as well. And when I go to Mako, part of committees and things I'm there, I meet with the county administrators as well as county commissioners when we get together. So as we all know, it's a 4-year elected term that you're elected by a popular vote in the community. The chief executive has a lot of responsibilities, and they include managing the city and making sure everything runs smoothly, keeping track of community projects and environmental cleanup efforts, enforcing local laws and regulations, working with the city and county council, council commissioners to develop policies and budgets, report to the council and the public on government activities, hiring and firing department heads and other staff with some oversight from council, creating goals and plans to improve the community's quality of life, safety, and economy, appoint boards, commissions, and committees recognized by the local government, do the job of a mayor by attending. That's not mine, is it? That's you. Okay. Same ringtone as mine, so I had to look to make sure it wasn't me. So, in this position, you do the job of a mayor by attending all community events that you can. Do ribbon cuttings, proclamations, and speaking events representing the local government. Represent Butte-Silver Bow on boards, committees like the Montana League of Cities and Towns, Mako, which is the Montana Association of Counties, the Montana Infrastructure Coalition, the Butte Chamber of Commerce, and the BLDC. I'm involved in all the labor negotiations, as all of you may be well aware. There's 18 CBAs in Butte-Silver Bow, more than there are in the state of Montana. So we're unique when we talk about that. So what powers does the chief executive have? So it's working with the directors and managers every single day on the running of the city. Decisions are made on how that we efficiently do that, working together. You don't vote on agenda items at the Council of Commissioners unless there's a tie vote. And at that time, the chief executive is the tie-breaking vote. And that's the only time that you'll see the chief executive vote in there. The chief executive prepares the city-county budget, working with all the department heads and elected officials to ensure everything is in order to meet the needs of the community. Different support and accountability. The chief executive can appoint an administrative aide with their duties. And with that, that's one of the things that talk about. Currently, I have an appointed Jim Cambich in that position for us here. And in the past, most of the other chief executives made that into an administrative aide that was more on the clerical sense rather than one that came in and is able to work and attend meetings and represent the chief executive of that. The charter allows for that, but it really is not defined in there. So that's one of the things that I think in some of the future questions I think I'm going to address. In summary, the chief executive is a key leader of the local government, responsible for managing city and county operations, enforcing laws, and working with the community to make Butte-Silver Bow a better place to live. And so that's just an overview, a generalized view of what we do every day as the chief executive role.
Thank you. Ms. Dolan?
Madam Chair, could we ask follow-up questions in regard to each questions before we go to the next one?
Absolutely. If we start dragging on, I might pull us back.
Okay. So, thank you. So, JP, I want to get your take on, with regard to governing responsibilities, how do you work with and govern other, and I've gotten this question, so I'm kind of the conduit, but the dealing with other elected officials, because they seem to have their own autonomy because they're elected. How does that work, and can you give us a sense of that?
Sure. Thank you. I guess, how do we address you guys as commission members, Commission Purdue Dolan? So on this, I see that role as being one of pretty much equal, although the chief executive has accountability for all of their budgets, right? So it's one where each one of the elected officials has control of how their departments run. They're able to hire the people within their department. They're able to run their departments how they see fit within the charter of what their duties are as the executive members of the local government. With that being said, there's accountability through the chief executive's office to make sure that it's ran efficiently as well, and that we're able to address issues that come up that maybe a great example is having a good relationship with the sheriff. The sheriff's an elected official. His department is a paid department that's paid out of general fund, and so when we set the budget and the things that go on, and there's a lot of accountability to the chief executive to make sure that things are being addressed and ran smoothly, such as the jail and things. So there has to be that relationship. But I do not have the power to direct the sheriff how he runs the sheriff's department. Similar with the county attorney. If there's issues within the county attorney's office, I don't have the power to go in and direct the county attorney how he's going to run the day-to-day business of the county attorney's office. But having a relationship is critical with all elected officials. And with that, just under my administration, I have elected official meetings where I bring them in and we talk about that. So they understand what's going on in local government outside of their elected positions, but also I have an understanding what's going on in their departments as well.
How often do you meet, JP, with the other elected officials? That's a good thing to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So with that, we meet once a month, and it's a voluntary meeting. I have no authority to make them go, and there's things that come up that doesn't allow them to be there. And I will say, outside of the sheriff, I meet with the sheriff and the fire chief and the manager of Department of Emergency Services in a separate meeting, because those relate differently. So when we have those meetings are together with that group. So fire chief, the manager of Department of Emergency Services, and the sheriff. So we meet separately from that.
Excellent. Any other follow-up questions? Ms. Casey?
Mr. Chief Executive, how many employees are employed at Butte-Silver Bow?
Chairperson Casey, Chairwoman Casey, or not chair, Commissioner Casey. So on that, it fluctuates. We have somewhere in the range of about 480, 90 employees, but then we have summer employees, temporary positions that can change throughout the season depending on, when we hire the kids at the pool, the golf course, those things, and then depending on the length of the season, when we hire positions that we need for longer periods of time, helping with the parks and things like that. I didn't look up currently what our FT, our full-time employees are, but it's in the neighborhood of 480. Mm-hmm.
Ms. Dolan, you're up for question 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chief Executive, let me just put my glasses on, that'll help. What are the most critical problems presently confronting the local government, or the most critical problems presently with the local government?
Thank you, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan. There's numerous, I wouldn't call them all problems, but challenges within local government. And probably number one that comes to mind, which is, in the press a lot, is the Superfund issues that we have locally. And that's just addressing the needs. And as we currently stand, we have a new lead proposed cleanup level that's out there. And so a lot of public comment and dialogue around that challenges us to keep things moving. And I'm not trying to say anything about where any government is, federal, state, but there's challenges even that are happening with that. But with that, because of the dynamics that go around government and agencies, there's challenge of keeping progress moving. And so that's one of our biggest challenges, is to show the community that progress is happening within our community, that Superfund in Butte-Silver Bow has not stopped and gone stagnant. There's still movement and what that is, where that's accomplished. So that's one of the biggest challenges, and holding all of the agencies accountable to bring the narrative. And that's one of the challenges that I think that we've seen here, is that a lot of times Butte-Silver Bow is stuck with having to explain what's going on when the explanation should be coming from other agencies in front of the Council of Commissioners and in front of the public. And so that's one of the biggest challenges. Another one is our boards and commissions. We have a lot of boards and commissions and committees in Butte-Silver Bow, into the mid-40 range, and appointing all of those positions and then holding them accountable to the rules of open public meeting laws. It's important for us to make sure that the public is able to speak to those boards, committees, and commissions when they're authorized by local government, but understand some of those boards and commissions and committees only meet once a year, twice a year, and those change over in the tracking of those. And so we're working on that to make sure that all of that's brought onto the Butte-Silver Bow website. But that's been a challenge, and making sure that we're doing that and making sure that the government's accessible for everybody. Another challenge is budget, right? So not so much that we don't think we can manage our budget, but there's unknowns. And we're in a legislative session right now of what that can look like for local government. So right now we're sitting at a time where we're starting to forecast out, and we'll start meetings with all of our departments together about what the needs of each department are going to be. And so with that, there's legislative decisions of what taxable mills are going to look like in Butte-Silver Bow, and that's still an unknown. We have a fire department that's up against their cap as far as mills can go, and so we're looking at what are our possibilities as we see more growth in our community, but we're at within our own fire department, we've reached the cap of the mills that we can. How do we accommodate future growth within that? And so that's a challenge. The relationship between our paid fire department and the volunteer fire department is a challenge. And we're trying to work through that. That's a 48-year history that doesn't go away in a couple days, but we're working on that and working to fairly work with both sides to make sure that we provide the best emergency services in Butte-Silver Bow. So that's a challenge, and sometimes all of us got to set our egos aside and work for the betterment of the community. There's a lot of dynamics to local government and bringing people together with a lot of different personalities and making sure that they know that the government's open to the public to bring forth their their suggestions, their input, and what that looks like. So those are some of the challenges that we have. Again, people talk about problems. They're all challenges, and they all can be worked through on how we do that. But for me, it's being able to give enough capacity to the most important needs within the community, because it does spread the person in this seat across the board pretty thin on what is required of the chief executive.
Thank you. Follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan.
I have two questions for you, JP. The first is, speaking to the budget issues that are always a challenge and a finite amount of money, what is do you think right now is the capacity for Butte-Silver Bow with regard to full-time employees? Back in like 2014, 15, it was around 350 employees, if I'm not mistaken, and now it's up to about 480. What is the tipping point where what can we afford with regard to employees and hiring on more people? Because I hear that as an issue.
Commissioner Perdue-Darling, I think that number may be misrepresented. I don't think we've added 130 employees since 2016. I know that every year that all of the employees that come forth are all brought forth to the Council of Commissioners, and it's when we bring that, we have to justify what those positions are. There's different positions that have been added. You know, when you look at some of the positions that we've had to add, we added an IT director this year, right? The IT needs of the community, as we're looking in here as the study commission, and the capacity within IT has grown, and that doesn't change. And the vulnerabilities without having a well-trained, equipped IT department could be disastrous, and we've seen that even with the school district with things that happen there. So that's where we've grown. We've seen growth in other departments, but very incrementally. I think last year we might have added 2 positions, and in the 4 years that I've been chief executive, now going into my 5th year, I could say there's probably been less than 10 positions added, and some of those are seasonal or temporary positions. One was an arborist that we brought on to take care of trees within Butte-Silver Bow is much needed and called for, and in a lot of other communities that's a full department. And so we're incrementally having to address some of the needs within the community, and you know, the community demands what they demand, and then we try to address that without impacting the budget as much as possible. I will say this though, it's important to look at what the impact is to the local mills, and I think if all the chief executives prior to me and hopefully moving forward, that mills aren't raised in Butte-Silver Bow at the impact of local government. We've reduced mills as mill values have gone up. We've reduced those mills to reduce the impact to the local community, and I think that every one of the chief executives that have sat in the seat have done a real effective job of trying to do that.
Ms. Casey.
Mr. Chief Executive, could you clarify, some of those positions that were added were not out of the general fund, is that correct? They are self-funded, for lack of a better terminology?
Yeah, Commissioner Casey, that's correct. Some of those are grant funded. Some are out of funding through development of departments that were needed to facilitate it. One of those, as you look at it, is a Superfund department. I think that much criticized within that, but that is not, they're not at the behest of Atlantic Richfield. They still are Butte-Silver Bow employees, but it's funded through the trusts that were established to be able to have local government oversee those departments. But a lot of different ones, if you look at the health department and even even in our planning department, as we're seeing continued growth, those positions are being funded out of fees, out of activities that are needed to fund, and then of course enterprise funds that fund some of those positions that we have at Metro Sewer Water. Those are funded through fees, not really through raising taxes.
Any other follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chief Executive, can you speak to, I've got two questions, but one, the biggest thing I hear from folks right now is the unelected bureaucracy. It's the unelected folks who work in the courthouse. How do you work with that issue and dealing with folks in the public with regard to accountability?
Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, could you be more specific about who we're talking about? Because most of the people that work in local government are not elected. So you're talking about a vast majority of the people that work in local government. So I'm trying to, can you give me a specific that we're talking about?
Well, let me give you an example. I think the newest issue is the new building that's going to happen through like Superfund EPA money. And that, all of that pre-planning for that building behind the Civic Center. Sorry, you look confused.
Sure, yeah.
That building. But all of the prep up to then, I would think, and I've heard from folks that say, if you went out to Walmart and asked 100 people about that new building and all the prep for that, which is done by Butte-Silver employees, to your point. But the way information travels from the courthouse to the public, if you went out to Walmart and asked 100 people about that building, I think 95 would likely say, I don't know anything about it. And maybe that's on the constituent, but also with regard to the folks that are planning everything, and then they get up to the council, and then it gets approved or disapproved, but there's disconnect. I guess that's the best way to say it.
Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, I would argue that the exact opposite has happened. Everything that we pointed towards with the community change grant, in which we were awarded that grant, came about because of studies that were done, that were funded by local government, that added public participation. And I'll go to Uptown Master Plan. I'll go to our community-wide, I just went blank, Lori, master plan that we had, our resiliency plan. All of these all had open public engagement that was publicized, and the things that came out of those plans actually identified this as the project with a lot of public participation. Now, to your point, not everybody in the public is maybe going to be able to speak to that, but it wasn't from lack of announcement or ability to participate for all of those plans. The comprehensive plan is what I was looking for.
And one follow-up, the other question I got from folks is the amount of outsourcing. You know, we have 480 employees in Butte-Silver, but all of that outsourcing, I don't know if that goes beyond our jurisdiction, but I'm kind of curious as to, do you know the percentage of things that are outsourced to other companies? So in essence, this is the information, this is the question I got from someone. If it seems like from the outside looking in, we're paying twice. We pay the employees, but then we pay twice for information to come back to the county. So can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, I think that there are things that we do work with local professionals that have the technical ability to do some of the things that we're not able to do in-house, and we do outsource that, and we bring in the professional support to do that. Always with, and I think a huge return on that investment has been the number of grants and monies that have been brought in with that professional support. some of the things like the stormwater review that we outsource out, to have a professional engineer in-house, as to the point that you talk about having too many employees within in-house. Those things, we can go and only pay for those reviews of that rather than having a person sitting there waiting to do that. So the ability to use professional support, I think, has been used very prudently within local government. And I would defend on what we've done. And just to go back to the community change grant and working through all of the different plans that we had there, the investment into that was in maybe maximum of $100,000 that was done there. $20,000 actually was help funded privately. We work a lot with public-private donors that help us get to where we were at. I'm not saying that grant application, but I'm saying all the studies that went into that helped us facilitate that community change grant, and working with the professional firm to help that was privately funding outside of that, to get a $20 million no-match grant for the community, I think is a great investment for the community without having to ask for taxpayer dollars.
Mr. Gallagher, thank you for taking some time on these. We did definitely move out of our jurisdiction or purview of what we're, the charter is what we can focus on, and changes to the form of government is what we can focus on. But I think it's important that we do raise these questions that are coming to us. So I appreciate that. I do have a follow-up question that I think could fit in the charter. You were talking about the Superfund and the issues with public communication in Superfund. And you have the commission, SARTA, correct?
Yes.
Could you talk to us or speak to us a little bit about how SARTA functions in terms of giving information out to community, or if they do?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman Brandel. So SARTA is one of our boards that's appointed to oversee the trusts that were set aside for Butte-Silver Bow. Within that, we have now it's Julia Crane that facilitates those meetings out there. Within that, they use I'm trying to think, Pit Watch. It comes out of that and is funded through that. All of the meetings, agendas, and everything are posted on Butte-Silver Bow's website, as well as bipsu.com. It's posted out there for everyone to see and participation in it. And it's greatly, there's a lot of really good programming that has come out of that. When we talk about festivals in Butte, that's been funded particularly out of that, and the growth of those festivals and success of those festivals that come from that. Within that, you have the county attorney represented there. The chief executive represents Butte-Silver Bow on the board. We also have a commissioner that represents that on the board. And then the rest are appointed onto that board and serve a term. One, it comes from the Historic Preservation Council. I wanted to make sure commission, not council, commission. So that's why I said we have a lot of different boards, but they are represented from the Historic Preservation Commission that is on there as well. So we try to have a diverse group that is represented on there. And then, again, always public engagement is critical in this, and we're trying to get as much information out there as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other follow-ups? Okay. So I think we're to you, Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, thank you. Chief Executive Gallagher. What changes, if any, in governmental structure, organization, or powers would help local government address its most important critical problems?
Commissioner Thielen, commissioners, this is a good question, right? Efficiency within local government, and what do I see as could be more efficient or work well? I think our charter form of government and consolidated government works well. I think it fits the needs of our community, based on our geographic location. If our form of government was sent to Yellowstone County, say, you've got Laurel, you got Billings, you got the Heights, you got different areas around there that you'd have more metropolitan or larger communities. It would be hard to try to govern that with one local government, but it fits well with what the needs that we have here. What are some of the changes and inefficiencies? I think some of the issues that we've seen recently out of one of our departments, I think the coroner's office put underneath the sheriff's department would be appropriate. And that's not to go against anybody's skill level or anything like that, but in most counties, the coroner is a position underneath the sheriff's department. And I've talked to Sheriff Lester about this, and I think he's in agreement with this as well. And you'll speak to him, and he'll be able to answer that to you. I think that we can, that would be efficient. And we always then know we had trouble having deputy coroners on call or approved to go out and meet the needs of the community. And so I think that could be one. I think the position of the administrative aide underneath the chief executive, and this would be a cost to the community, but if you look at Missoula's form of government, much the same as ours, they're a strong mayor form of government, and they have a city administrator that works at the pleasure of the chief executive. But it requires the education and background of that of a city manager, and they're hired under that they would have to have those qualifications to come into that position and be required of that within the city county government. That gives a layer of that of understanding of how local governments, they go to school, they're trained for that, they go through the educational process that gives them that. If you look at city managers around the state of Montana, they're not inexpensive. They're paid professionally, and so that would be a challenge. But it would allow within this form of government that we have now, that has worked since 1977, to have that level of professional underneath the chief executive to allow that continuity. Now, if a new chief executive comes in, that person could, because they serve at the pleasure of the chief executive, could be removed out of that. They'd be on a contract, much like Jim Cambich is for me right now. But there would be a requirement of that educational background and professionalism underneath that position that would mandate that they have those qualifications. Right now, it doesn't have that. Our local form of government, much like the federal government, state government, the chief executive's position is you have to be 18 years old, and you know, you have to live in the community for 1 year, right? And a registered voter. I think the people that have served in this role have had very good experience and a lot of great background in there. But you could have people that come in that have a very, very diverse background without a lot of government experience that could step into this position. But again, the local electorate has that ability to do that. You can maintain where the local public chooses the person that they want to lead, but you have a level of protection of having some experience and professionalism that is underneath that. I think that's potential that I could see could be a benefit to this. You know, we talk about 12 council of commissioners. I respect every single person that sits in the seat of being on the council of commissioners. I think it's a large number to try to work together on a stipend base to have them try to have the full understanding of the needs of the local government and be thoroughly read on the issues and the things before them. I think it's a challenge, and I think that we've been fortunate on all the people that we've had in those seats, but I think there potentially could be more efficiency with less numbers of council of commissioners. And that's just outside view looking in of how we do that, and it allows for better communication too, to try to communicate with 12 commissioners all the time and keeping them informed on the things that they need to do. It's a challenge, and you know, we have a former chairman of the board in here, and I think that Chairman Shaw or Commissioner Shaw can attest to trying to bring all 12 together and have a clear understanding of the roles of the commissioners is a challenge in itself.
Follow-up question.
Sure.
Mr. Thielen?
Chief Gallagher, what do you think about the idea of having 4 full-time commissioners and the chief being the tiebreaker?
Commissioner Thielen, I think that's, as you review this, I think our form of government works well, and I think it's efficient. I don't know. I see counties work with 3 commissioners, and they have administrative roles. Essentially, in a lot of those counties, some of the bigger counties have a county administrator that's there. Generally, city governments don't have full-time council members, but counties have full-time commissioners. We're a hybrid here. I don't know how that looks. I think you would change the form of government drastically here on what that looks like. I'm in full support of seeing it done differently. Maybe commissioners paid at a higher salary to be more involved, more of a part-time salary, so that they're able to invest the time that's in there. And I think that, up to, depending on what this body decides to put forth to the taxpayers, right, and the voters. That's the whole thing. Is our challenge is make sure we put forward to the taxpayers what they would like to see, because what you guys bring forward from here still would need to be approved there. And so, again, I think our form of government, our charter form of government, gives us a lot of independence from the state government. And so, how our charter was drafted and implemented in 1977. I think you need to look long and hard at that to say what was the intent and why we're here, and does it give us, I can tell you when I go over to the state and testify at the state government, people are pretty envious of the ability to have a city county government work efficiently within local government to do that. And so for me, I would just say what you bring to the public, just understand what the changes could mean to the local, to our structure.
Mr. Dennehy?
More of a comment versus a question to Chief Executive Gallagher, but the question that you had, Ben, is exactly why we're here. It's exactly what we're looking at. It's exactly why this commission was placed by the voters of this community, to look exactly what you just said. Now that takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of guts, it takes a lot of courage to say what you said. It's one hybrid of what the structure could be, but if we are going to make a difference in this community, that is kind of the question that we need to have comments on. The form of government, the structure of government, is it going to be tweaked? Are there going to be offices eliminated? Or are we going to add folks? That's kind of where the rubber meets the road here. So I appreciate that question, Ben, and I thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, for your input in terms of what you would like to see or what could be, in your opinion, a better government.
Mr. Thielen?
And on that, one more thing, Chief Executive Gallagher, you said you had spoke with Sheriff Lester. Would that be making the sheriff the coroner and then having the 4 lieutenants as the deputy coroners? That way you'd have somebody on all the time.
Commissioner Thielen, I think that's kind of exactly where would be the sheriff or somebody within his department would be the coroner. I think if you look at Lewis and Clark County, you look at Jefferson County, you look at all of these counties around, the sheriff is, or somebody within that department is the coroner. And then that way you have the ability that your officers could be deputized as deputy coroners as well. You always have people on 24/7 based on, of course ours would be police officers. that could be part of the deputy coroner, but it would be ran out of the sheriff's office, and it would be part of the department itself. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. JP, I'm sorry, Chief Executive, could you speak to what your thoughts are with regard to the commission numbers, the commissioner numbers, with regard to whether or not it would be more efficient and save the taxpayers' money if the commissioners were smaller in number, but full-time versus part-time? Because I know a lot of questions I used to get is the fact that a number of commissioners are still employed, they have full-time jobs, and they also work as a commissioner. So they're always playing catch-up. So I'm wondering your thoughts on part-time versus full-time.
Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, I think that's part of my answer before. I think they could be more efficient to be doing that. I don't know about full-time. I think that's something that this commission should look at directly to see what that economic benefit would be. Would it be a cost savings to make 5 people full-time as opposed to stipend, or 4 people and being stipend? I don't know if there's a cost savings in that. But with that being said, having people that have more time to understand what the issues in front of the local government are, I think that's something that needs to be looked at directly. I think that's I don't want to make a commitment to say you need full-time commissioners. I'm not sure that's what is needed or not. I think that's for the study commission to look at and come together and decide what you want to bring forward. But I can say this, with 12 commissioners representing local government, some of our districts are voted in by 100 people representing the full electorate of Butte-Silver Bow. Less districts with more public vote that puts those people in the seats, I think adds accountability.
Okay, one more.
Yeah, one more, sorry. Just on that note, with regard to the boards and commissions, you said there are about 40. Is that something that you think should be streamlined, or are they all worthwhile to keep? Just your thoughts.
Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, we're looking at all of those currently, and some are established by charter that we have to have. And so we're looking at, are there crossovers where the boards are doing effectively the same type of work, or what is the necessity for those boards or commissions? We're looking at all that, and if we choose to, it will come forward to the Council of Commissioners and talk to about those boards and commissions that have historically been there, and I don't know when the last time we really reviewed all of those as well.
Mr. Gallagher, I would think that would be really important information for this commission to receive if you're already doing some investigation into that. I'm sure that every member would like to look at that information so that we too could consider that, especially those that are charter required.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'll get the information on that. If we make any recommendations that would affect any of those boards or commissions or committees.
Ms. Casey.
Mr. Chief Executive, currently the coroner's part of the charter as an elected official. So the changes that you're thinking about with the sheriff would have to come through a change in the charter, correct? It couldn't be done before, or can it, given the current circumstance?
Commissioner Casey, that would need be addressed in the charter at some point. What we're doing now is we're facilitating the ability to provide coroner services by bringing someone in and on a interim basis while we're dealing with the other situations that we're dealing with.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up questions to this question? All right, folks, we are an hour in, and we're on our third question. And so we have a question about advice to the commission regarding conducting a comprehensive and impactful review. And I think we've been hearing that advice woven through the questions that you've answered so far. So if it's okay, I'd like to skip ahead to question 5. Mr. Dennehy, if you want to take that.
Chief Executive Gallagher, what inefficiencies could be addressed through changes of local government structure? Have you thought of that? And if you can give us some advice or at least your opinion.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Dennehy. And so to that, I think we've addressed it in a lot of the questions that we've talked to in here. You know, some of the things that is I see when I'm in my job, there's times I feel inefficient because I spend a lot of times at meetings or events. I think they could be done with another professional underneath me, which I do have a very strong relationship with my chief of staff that I allow him to be part of some of the things that we do. But having it addressed within local government and professional, I think that could allow for more efficiency of working with contracts and different meetings where they have decision-making ability on behalf of the chief executive. That could add to that. I think that, you know, we can look and review all of the inefficiencies that we have in all of our departments. And I think a review of that and goal setting and those things need to be addressed on a yearly basis with all of our department heads and managers and supervisors as well. That being said, that's the same as the legislative branch. I think we need to look at that within ourselves on the legislative side as well. You know, and one of the things, going back to maybe what question 4 says, and the only advice I would give to this commission is come to this with an open mind of what can be done for local government, not to have preconceived notions of what needs to be changed without looking at the full picture and interviewing everybody that comes in before you. Because I will say this, I'm incredibly proud to work with local government, our department heads and things, and sometimes all of us know local government gets criticized in a lot of different realms out there about that we don't work as hard as we should. And I see the exact opposite happening. I think we have incredibly talented professional people that work hard every single day. Can we get better? Absolutely. Is there some things that we can look at and address in here? I think it needs to happen. I was a big supporter of this commission happening. I think we need to review our local government, and I just applaud you all for volunteering to be a part of that.
Thank you. Ms. Dolan.
Mr. Chief Executive, to that point, with advice and inefficiencies, would you think that, just your opinion, to put in the charter or to add something to the charter to the effect of, unless it's already being done, so you have to educate me, with all we're seeing in the federal side of auditing agencies and the different departments that Butte-Silver Bow has, would it be advantageous to audit and put in the charter something about auditing each agency and to make, or excuse me, each department to make sure we have efficiencies across the board?
Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, I understand your question. I think we do that already. We look at how our departments run. That's a daily process of, are we efficient? Are we doing the work that needs to be done? To do what's going on at the federal level, it would add just what we talk about. You'd be adding a layer of jobs to come in and audit these positions. Outside agency, I mean, I think that the way we operate local government currently, that's being done. That's happening within department head meetings and with our supervisors when we meet every 2 weeks. We talk about structure, needs, And at every budget meeting that we have when we set the budget, that audit is happening within local government. We do that internal audit and address that directly without having to add another level there. But, always it's good to look at what we do locally, right, and within our government and how we can be more efficient. But I don't think having an outside audit or brought in or another department to do that, I don't think that would make it more efficient.
Just for clarification, you do have the performance budget that is a form of audit, and then you have a professional auditor every year because that's required, correct?
Yeah, Chairman Brandel, those are correct. I was more addressing the immediate days that we do that, but we do a performance budget that is out there for everyone in the community to do. It's on the website. You can look at it. We go through that. We do have an outside audit that is mandated by law to audit the books for the efficiencies within our local government. So that is correct. So thank you for helping.
Your strategic plan is also part of the website,
Aligned,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
So the strategic plan is aligned with the goals and mission of local government.
Okay, Mr. Silk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chief Executive, this is question number 6. What challenges do you foresee for Butte-Silver Bow in the next 10 to 20 years? And does the current government structure for the city-county meet those challenges effectively?
Thank you, Commissioner Silk. The challenges I think that we're seeing are really good challenges that we have out there, and that's continued growth and job development within our community. How we address the needs of a growing community and the housing needs that are going to come with that. I think we have infrastructure that can accommodate some of that growth. I think looking effectively at where those places are, where the community can grow is really paramount to this. And that falls back to the comprehensive plan. And as we look at and rewrite our zoning, that's critical as well. That accommodates future growth. I think it's also important that we look directly at the companies and corporations and businesses that are looking to locate in our community. We're not one of those communities currently, I think, that is starved to just let anybody in the door, because we need jobs in our community. Our local community is seeing that continued growth. We're seeing taxable values and things going up locally here, but it's how we address that. Infrastructure needs are critical. I think local government recently, and with the help of some of the tragic events through COVID, we were able to use the dollars that were afforded to us to repair a lot of infrastructure. We need to continue to do that. When those federal grants and federal programs are out there, we need to be looking at them strategically, working with grant writers to help address those so that we can minimize the impact of what that is and ask of the taxpayers, and being really poignant on what those are going to be. But the challenges are going to be growth. It's coming whether we want it or not, but we get to be a part of what that looks like. And I think, that's the one beautiful thing about living in Butte-Silver Bow and our community, is that I don't think anybody is going to change the identity of our community. They're going to have to change to what our identity is here.
Any questions for follow-up? Ooh, moving along. So, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Executive Gallagher, what is the current rate of annual compensation for the Chief Executive and members of the Chief Executive's office professional staff? And secondly, are these rates of compensation fair?
Commissioner Shaw, the annual rate of compensation is I'm currently at is about $124,000 for the Chief Executive salary. The Chief of Staff's salary, I believe, is just at the high 80s rate, maybe hit 90 this last year. And then all of our other staff within the Chief Executive's staff are under the clerks union, And so they follow the clerks union on that. So is it fair? Absolutely, it's fair in the compensation because I accepted it. But I will say, and I've had people say that the chief executive is paid too much. I can say that when I look at city managers that don't take on a lot of the responsibility that the chief executive here locally does, of any community of size, they're paid in the 170 to 200 range. I am not expecting that to change, and I don't know, that's going to be a review for you guys here. I feel like I'm fairly compensated there, but I don't think I'm overpaid. And I wouldn't apologize for the salary that the chief executive is paid here locally, because the duties that are assigned to the chief executive, it's fair, but is it high? I would say no. And I think the other positions are. I will say, when I talk about the chief of staff, if it made into that professional position, you could expect to have to pay a higher rate for that professional education that would be required of that position if that was something that this body did. And if you went to a city manager form of government, I can tell you the city manager in Belgrade, Montana is at $190,000 for a city manager. The assistant city manager that was fired that they had to pay out because of incidents there was making over $200,000 as an assistant city manager. And you're talking cities, not city county. So just to put it in perspective.
Thank you.
Yep.
Follow-up questions? Mr. Thielen.
Chief Gallagher, one thing I'd like to bring up that you brought up here, it kind of brings to mind as elected versus paid. In a couple conversations I've had with some people over the last week, it seems that the elected people may have Butte's better interest at heart, as opposed to somebody that's gone to school on the East Coast and then wants to come here and do it for a substantial amount more. So I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thielen.
Ms. Dolan.
Mr. Chief Executive, could you tell us how many clerks are currently employed with the Chief Executive's office? I think you added one after you added Jim Cambridge, but can you talk about that and how much those clerks make?
So, Commissioner Purdue Dolan. So there was the two that were in there stayed in there. The chief of staff position, I took what was traditionally an administrative assistant that fell under the clerk's position for a while and then was contracted out differently. As I came in, that position needed to be somebody that was able to represent the chief executive there and is allowed by charter. So we kept those same two. They work administrative positions in there, which includes being routing all of our phone calls, taking in all the people that are there. It's needed to have those two there. They both fall under the clerk's union. One's a clerk 4, the other one's a clerk 3. I don't know the exact compensation, but they fall under that CBA.
Thank you.
Ms. McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And Chief Executive Gallagher, I just wanted clarification. Are you kind of proposing that to mold the Chief of Staff position into a city manager position?
So Commissioner McCormick, I'm not saying to mold it into a city manager. The position, and I think a good comparison would be Missoula, the city of Missoula. The position is a position that serves at the pleasure of the chief executive, but they're able to they can be that administrative position that sits in a lot of these meetings and represents for them, the mayor. For us, it would be the chief executive to be able to make some of those decisions. I think it allows for some professional accountability to their education background stuff. I think it could be a support. I'm not advocating for a city manager because I think that changes our whole form of government. And to me, our form of government, I think, is an elected official here. I think there's some efficiencies to it, but I'm very strong in favor of an elected chief executive with a council of commissioners form of government, consolidated government. I think that it's worked well for a number of years. There's some things that can be added to it. My suggestion to that is just to make that a professional position. It doesn't have to be city manager labeled, and elevate to that level.
Any other follow-up questions? Mr. Silk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chief Executive, this is a very short and sweet question. Do you feel that you have enough help within your office? I know that you just mentioned that maybe making a professional aide, city manager kind of type deal, but do you have enough help with your clerks and Mr. Kamich in there?
Commissioner Silk, that's a great question, and it's a hard one to answer because you don't know what it would look like if you had a lot more support, right? I can tell you that my chief of staff, Mr. Cambridge, does an incredible amount of work for us on the back end of local government. His experience and knowledge that add to me. I don't know how I could have done that job with somebody in the position that traditionally was just somebody that was more of an admin clerk type position. So to that being said, I think we work efficiently. The workload is extensive. I'm fortunate that I have a guy in that position that comes in at 7 and I have to send home because he'll work all night if you allow him to do that, and he'll do anything for the county. But I believe we can efficiently work that. It's just, as I said, I'm not saying that I don't have an incredibly experienced person in that job, but I think that I would like to see that it's kind of required to have that education and background for that position to be able to offer that position to somebody.
Thank you. Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. JP, can you, to Chad's point, or excuse me, Commissioner Silk's point, because now we're in a legislative year, it doesn't happen every year, but every 2 years, does the Chief Executive Office in Butte-Silver Bow have enough help in as far as sending someone to Helena on behalf of Butte-Silver Bow? I know you do that. Mr. Cambich does that, but is that a position where every 2 years you'd like to have some help with that? I just want your thoughts just because of the year we're in right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan. That's a great question and something that we did address this year. We hired a lobbying firm to help represent us that was approved by the Council of Commissioners to allow that. It goes back to, if you go back in history, J.D. Lynch used to do that for Butte-Silver Bow and it was very effective. We hired M&M Consulting that represents us. John Melia and Pat Noonan are our lobbyists over there. It's incredibly important to have those people in the halls just to let us know what's coming forward, knowing that there's over 4,000 bills that were proposed this year and trying to understand how that affects local government or different agencies. It's incredibly important for us to have somebody there that is paying attention to it. Our local legislators are fantastic, but they're also on multiple committees and they're on the House floor and stuff, and so it's hard to task them with notifying us every time anything is up. Jim Cambich, for us, my chief of staff, does an incredible job to try to track the things that are going on there. But that being said, when we need to, we send the people that the department may affect to Helena and talk because they have the most knowledge that affects them, whether it's planning, whether it's community development, whether it's the chief executive's office or the fire department. We require, or we rely on that professional experience and knowledge to go over and try to let people give that knowledge to the legislators. And I think we've been incredibly effective. This year, it's nice to be able to talk to people that are walking the floor, speaking to our lobbyists, to just say, hey, can you pay attention to this and let us know when something's happening that we need to be there. So it's critical. And we work with the Montana League of Cities and Towns and MACO directly as well, and stay in constant contact with them, because the decisions made at the legislature impact local government tremendously.
All right, excellent. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, so if you'd like to come and ask yours. We need you on the microphone, though, for YouTube, please.
Chris Harris, 823 North Excelsior. My question has to do with management and training. When we're confronted with situations, whether it's the coroner or whatever, it all boils down to lack of management and lack of training. So my question is this is not a glamorous issue. It's just back to basics. And I have a whole laundry list of examples, and it always vexes me that I ask employees, have you been trained in this? You know, because you're trespassing all over my land. No, they haven't. And if you spin that wheel long enough, then you get issues that come up like the county coroner. You can take care of those things with management and training. My question is there a management? Do your managers receive training? Are the employees trained? Because it's a tough one to see.
Mr. Gallagher.
I guess I'll address, do employees and managers get training? Absolutely. We have training that happens in every department that we go through. There's HR, we do supervisor training. We've brought in local government from MSU that comes in and does trainings for us. We brought in multiple different agencies to help with that. So we all can use more training, but we have a safety culture that I think is incredibly important. I'm not quite sure of exactly what else he was speaking to, but do we train people? Yes, absolutely. We hire people, and hopefully that they have the training. Sometimes we do have to train them, and those things do happen departmentally.
Excellent. So that wraps our questions, and I really appreciate you spending an hour and 18 minutes going through them so succinctly. So, and I appreciate you bringing to us, your internal study of the boards. I think that would be very helpful to us, especially those that are charter appointed or required. Are there any other questions for Mr. Gallagher before we excuse him to his evening with his wife?
Madam Chair, he better hurry.
Yeah. I was told where the best place to get flowers are, so that helps. Thank you all. And truthfully, when I say this, I appreciate you, because you're volunteer to be a part of this, and it's incredibly important. So thank you. And if there's any other needs you have of me or my department, please reach out, and we'd be happy to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, shut it off.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is correspondence of study commission update.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We didn't have any correspondence in our box to date. And I have a very short report. I called and followed up with an email from Mike Neary to have him here next week. I haven't heard back. I will follow up tomorrow. I sent a timetable, to publish a legal notice in the paper, and so that is in progress. And we'll have a purchase card. I just need to be trained on how to reconcile it, so we'll have a credit card to use for any purchases we need to make, copies or office supplies or whatever. And then I have a couple of your log sheets. I need the rest of your volunteer log sheets tonight, if you don't mind, so I can get those into Cinda.
Excellent. I think we're copying each other, I think. So we have those log sheets, so we can get them to you right away. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Cohn. So on to unfinished business. Thank you, Mr. Enruth, for being here tonight to finish off our discussion of the draft bylaws. You were reporting to us on the use of Zoom and being able to vote via Zoom if needed, and also about proxy voting.
Yes, Madam Brandel, Commissioners. So after reviewing what Butte-Silver County does, what our legislature does, and looking at proxy votes, I highly recommend that the council does not use proxy votes. One of the only places that they're used at the current legislature is in committee. They don't use it on the floor. And it's for a good reason. A lot of times when you transfer a proxy vote to someone, there could be something misconstrued. The vote goes the wrong way. It doesn't work well. So I would highly suggest not using proxy votes for this particular commission, so it coincides with Butte-Silver County's regular commission rules as well. Appearing via Zoom, if you are unable to be here during regular commission meetings, is not prohibited. It is allowed. The only issue you are going to have with that is you have to coordinate with IT on how that will work. From my personal experience in Butte-Silver County within the past 2 months is it will be difficult. IT is stretched thin. They would have to be here at night if someone is online, because the people that are watching, via YouTube would also have to be able to view them and how does it work. So while it is allowed, your biggest hurdle, in my opinion, is going to be with IT and how they would, walk you guys through those steps.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you for that report. So hearing no questions, I would say let's bring our bylaws back next week to receive an official vote. Ms. Cohn, would you have the draft bylaws ready, correct?
They are. I don't think we've made any changes to them since I passed them out a few weeks ago.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ken, I think we did just change that one about the Wednesday and Friday. That was
Yeah,
the only,
right.
okay, that has been put on. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so that all of us make sure that we review the most recent copy, if we can have those in our
I'll send
email
them
in
out.
our packet, and then we'll vote on them next week if that's
Yeah.
okay with everyone.
Madam Chair, so after Matt's advice to this commission, I guess the question that if you're on Zoom, you need to be here in person to vote.
You could technically appear via Zoom to vote. It's the by proxy that.
Yeah, the
you're-
proxy I get,
Yeah.
but
Yep. Otherwise, if you're appearing via Zoom, you would be allowed to register your vote. But then again, I don't know specifically how you guys are voting, if it's just a simple yays or nays or with the clickers. That's all an IT question on how that all needs to be coordinated.
thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. That's a really good point in terms of what is in the bylaws. Currently, we don't give an allocation for coming by Zoom right now in the bylaws, correct? It was a question about if we'd want to do that or not. So given our IT challenges, I would suggest that we probably be here in person. Is there any objection to that, or we want to add in the Zoom piece in the bylaws?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add to that as the expense. If we do Zoom, we're going to have to pay IT, and I'm worried that we need to keep that down to a minimum, if possible. Could be a big dollar sign over the years.
Ms. Dolan.
I'd like to make a motion with regard to Zoom, that this body, while Zoom is great for things that may not be great for this, and to come in person, and if you can't, just be excused, like Mr. Steppen is tonight. Otherwise, we get into a whole lot of can't hear, can't do, just a lot of things that we can avoid just to be here in person. So make that motion a little shorter, to say make a motion not to use Zoom for the study commission 24-26.
Okay, I have a question on point of order because it isn't in the bylaws currently, so I'm not sure that we need a motion for that. Thank you, Ms. Dolan, for offering it, though. Okay, any new business? I have wanted to bring forward a discussion about public outreach. Ron Davis had invited us to participate in Party Line on a regular basis. And I told him I'd have the conversation with the commission to say, what we thought about that. Obviously, we can't have a quorum at Party Line, but we certainly can be there to discuss the workings of the commission and think about reaching out to our community in a different way. Obviously, we're not very well attended, and we have people watching online, but I think radio is a very valid way of getting our information out there. So I'd entertain conversation about that offer. Mr. Thielen.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think in this community that's probably a pretty viable offer, seeing how a lot of the people do listen to Party Line. So I would think that you could go.
Thank you. Mr. Enruth.
And just for the commission's knowledge, myself, JP, and the department heads have decided to do this on a regular basis as well to help foster, I believe, what Commissioner Purdue-Dolan was even getting at earlier, was there are not a lot of people that are truly involved with our local government. We do have some that are very involved, but the general public doesn't know that they can just be here. So by being on the radio, they get to hear their elected officials and department heads and their sheriff talking about what's going on in their community. So I would highly suggest that this board or commission elect an individual to go, but yes, also be aware that if you all go, that is a quorum, that has to be published, and that has issues. But outside of that, it's a good thing.
But one at a time is okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, based off of the numbers, yes.
I think that'd be a good thing to get the community more involved, and possibly give them an invite to come up here and see what we do or how we're doing it. I think it would help.
Excellent. Any other comments? Ms. Dolan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing that up. I think Party Line is a great opportunity because it's the oldest call-in radio program in the state of Montana. Fun fact. And it's because of that interaction with our community that it's so successful. So with that, and also the discussion that we had last week with regard to outreach and media, I've been trying to come up with a list of all of the high points or folks we should reach out to, from the paper to radio to so-called influencers that are out there on social media that might be helpful, including the Butte-Silver website and their social media as well. But to ask those questions, that's really great. And did you say that it was once a month that he was offering?
I think we could come as often as we wanted to, but he offered once a month, trying to set a regular schedule for us that we can be predictable for our community as well. I will get back in touch with him and bring back a possible set of dates and schedule. And then I think perhaps if Mr. Denny, he and I could take on the first episode. He's going, no. But you are a vice chair, so I'm just suggesting that. And I think a great tack would be to talk about the boundaries of the study commission, what we're here to do, what we're allowed to do, what our goals and objectives are. And then we can go from there in terms of, receiving questions from the community about our work and whatnot.
Madam Chair, and I would suggest that everybody gets put in the barrel to go talk to, to the party line. And it's great, and Ron does a great job. I think it's really great, and it's great to hear from other folks on the commission too.
Mr. Silk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that Cindy brought up last week was potential, ways to get it out to the public, and it might be worth asking when you talk to Mr. Davis about just monthly PSAs on maybe when we meet, the timeline that you guys were able to create. That is, I believe, free, and it might need to be a month in advance, just based off how it works. But I've been meaning to get a hold of Commissioner Perdue-Dolan about that. But since you were already talking to Mr. Davis, it might be something to ask him.
I think that's an excellent idea, and hopefully we can get our department head's schedule pretty well rounded so he can talk about that as well, so that folks know when we're interviewing department heads and elected officials as well.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Denny?
Yeah, I think as we get through the process and we think about our getting out to the public, our message, what we're going to make decisions on, that we do engage a contractor who would help us get the message across, someone who is has that knowledge of getting the public aware, so that we are making decisions that people know about. And I think that's can be done fairly well by a contractor, plus there's budget authority to do it. So once we get to that process, I would just keep that in the back of your mind when we talk about it. Thanks.
Ms. Dolan?
Just a follow-up to Commissioner Silk's comments. When you do a introductory, let's just say, party line, and discuss the scope and what the goals we have for this commission, it might be also to kind of, what's it when you're just playing the whole field at once? I forget the term, but anyway, flushing the field or rushing the field, I don't know. Anyway, forget that. But doing an op-ed for the paper to say what the scope is and what we're looking for, and looking for that transparency and that engagement from Butte-Silver folks.
Do I hear you volunteering to write an op-ed?
No, actually, I was going to say, because for chair and vice chair, you guys could do it, just on the scope of that, but I like how I delegated that.
That was beautiful. All right. I think that is a good idea in terms of, covering the bases. Maybe that's what you meant. But I would, want to bring that forward for all of you to review. I wouldn't by any means want to write it on my own or have Mr. Dennehy write it on his own. I think we would need to co-author this as a group within our public meeting laws, right? So is there any other discussion about public outreach? I know we have some listening sessions on our timeline. I think as we get closer to that, we should workshop those listening sessions and maybe form some subcommittees. Some of the listening sessions that I've been party to recently and other community events have been pretty powerful. You have nice posters there. You have people that can rotate through different stations and visit. They're less formal, and I think those are excellent ways of doing things. And so perhaps as we get down the road here, we can workshop that. Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion about public outreach? Okay, so hearing none, next week, I will bring you a schedule from Ron, and we'll make a plan in terms of content with that. Ms. Casey.
Madam Chair, in the past couple meetings, we discussed having or speaking with the MSU folks. I believe Kim found that they would not be coming, but is that still on our radar of speaking to them and going through the different forms of government in that? And are we going to set some dates maybe to see when they're available?
Ms. Cohn, they said they could visit with us by Zoom meeting. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, they said they'd be happy to answer any of our questions, but it would be via Zoom, which sounds like it might be a nightmare. But also, to address any questions we had, or if we need extra training, they're happy, outside of this meeting, if we need training or questions that are not addressed in our training materials.
I think there's there's some curiosity about these different ideas, and maybe it would be a good idea to reach out to, we were given the example of Missoula County. Maybe we could reach out to somebody in Missoula County about talking about the pros and cons of their form of government. I don't know if there's other ideas in that regard, other than MSU Law Center.
Madam Chair, I think MSU, whether it's via Zoom or not, we can probably engage IT for that one night meeting, for a Zoom meeting, but just to get kind of the foundation of who has certain forms of government, whether it's a strong city man or strong mayor, commissioner government, or whether it's a city manager, commission government, or whether it's town hall. They did a little bit of that sort of preparation with us, but not into the area where I think most of us feel comfortable and ask the question, well, how's it work for them? And they're not them, but they have probably some experience of guiding those communities to start or at least adopt their form of government. And that's all we need for the first stop. And then your suggestion of having Missoula or Helena or whoever has this, we have a Great Falls here from a person last week who gave us some information, to have them and see if they would come down and talk to us and reciprocate if they need us to go and talk to them. That's probably how we would deal with it. But I think it's a great idea. First, the foundation with MSU, and then having the specific form of government from a specific city or county come and talk to us about what they like and what they don't like.
Excellent. Ms. Cohn, can you please make that connection with MSU Law Center about a Zoom meeting and also connect to IT?
I'll do that. I'll look. It has to be, everything is scheduled through their website. It's not like I call and go, hey, can you guys come? So I will look into that.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just thinking, every time we talk about other cities having different forms of government, I keep forgetting, not everybody else, but I keep forgetting that we are a city-county combined government, and we are unique. And when JP was talking about, things that maybe reducing commissioners or that sort of thing, it always reminds me, we're much more than just city government. We also are county. And we're spread all over creation, really, in our county, including the county. But I was thinking that maybe I would personally love to have Anaconda Deer Lodge come visit with us, because they're like our partners in crime as far as our government, our form of government, and maybe they can give us some ideas on, their challenges and things that they have concerns with, that because we're just so similar. But that was just my thought. Thank you.
That's an excellent point. And I think in our training, they talked about the twins, or the combined. And, certainly in representation, when we think about, decreasing the number of commissioners, that's also a representation challenge that we need to consider as well, in terms of where people live and how to equally represent them, or represent them well. So certainly hearing from Deer Lodge might be, and Anaconda Deer Lodge might be an excellent idea, because that's also a very large county. So it sounds like Anaconda Deer Lodge might be an outreach that we'd want to do, and perhaps Missoula perhaps Helena, see who bites, I guess. And then I heard Mr. Dennehy said he would reciprocate. And sorry. All right, any other discussion on our public outreach? Ms. McCork, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just concerned about our next week meeting. Ken said she hadn't pinned Mr. Neary down for our next week's meeting. So I don't know if we want to make a backup just in case he can't come. And the interview committee, we put some questions together for the chief executive if we want to use the same questions. I just want to tell that I'm leaving to go out of town tomorrow, and I won't be able to work on that until I'll be back Friday evening. So if we want to change the interview questions up, I'm going to have to rely on the other members of the interview committee to do that.
Are there suggestions for another department head to possibly pull in if Mr. Neary isn't available?
Just whoever would be next in line, if we could, if Mr. Neary's not available, maybe see if the sheriff's available.
Sheriff's elected. I think we're starting with our department heads. Yes? Okay. So maybe, okay. Okay. Ms. Casey?
Madam Chair, maybe we should be reaching out to more than one of the department heads, like all of them, and offer some dates and start leaving them pick. I think to get through this, we're probably going to have more than one a night. And we had a lot of questions for the chief executive, but I think our questions will become more, I think the timeline will not be as significant as it was tonight, but my suggestion would be, because department heads are very busy too, and so I think we should be reaching out to all of them and leaving them start to pick some dates, and then if it gets too full of an agenda, just start asking them if they can come a different night. But that would be my suggestion.
Ms. Casey, I think that's an excellent idea. It does concern me that we're one at a time or piecemealing it. I think we need to be casting the wide net. I'm trying to figure out which metaphor you were thinking of. But I think that would be a good idea. And then we said 2 a night, right? Or try to do that. And so then the subcommittee's work can kind of be thinking ahead in terms of these would be the questions we'll ask of planning. These will be the questions we'll ask of parks. These will be the questions we'll ask of emergency services. Ms. Casey?
And I would say a lot of these questions can be the same, really and truly. It would just be maybe talking about their budget or their staff, but I think a lot of these questions flow right down to all the departments.
Yeah, and I agree with Laura. I think the big question would be, what would your suggestion be for more efficient government? Is there any changes that you would like to do to your department that would help facilitate that change and that efficiency and that effectiveness? The other things that are fairly general from the good work that the interview committee did can be used. And you know what? We're pretty intelligent group of folks. I think we could come up with our own questions that, to ask if is really what's under your bailiwick of what you're interested in. For example, for the sheriff, I might have something that I need to have asked, and I think all of us could do that at the same time. But I really think that the questions that the interview committee has is pretty much down the line. I agree with Lori, but the big ones is what's your opinion on how to make this government more efficient and effective? So I think we should send out a list, have them fill it in, and then start doing the interviews based on the schedule that we come up with.
Ms. Cohn?
I'd like to clarify a little bit. We wanted to start with Public Works Because if you look at your thing, the department is huge. And so we thought Public Works would really take up one night, whereas we could do the archives and the library and, the Civic Center, maybe all 3 for 1. But Public Works is just, you've got Parks and Recreation, you've got roads, you've got the landfill, you've got cemetery. There are so many departments, and that's why we chose to just do Public Works in that one thing. And so it was the plan all along, it was my understanding, to do several at a time, but that department alone is the size of half the government. Well, a quarter of the government.
Madam Chair, I totally agree. I'm wondering, and I remembered the metaphor I was trying for desperately, flooding the zone. That's what I meant to say. 6 hours ago. I know. Who knows?
Flooding the zone.
Anyway. Yeah, I know. Well, I am originally from New England, so
There you go.
There you go. But to the point of Public Works or the Health Department, we have these big departments. Would it be useful, and I think for myself it would be very useful to invite, let's say on Public Works night, to invite Mark Neary, but also invite the heads of cemetery, landfill. And so if we have specific questions after we get the broad information, then they're here to answer and don't have to come back a following week, or, especially with something like Park and Rec or roads. I mean, gosh, we get inundated with, information from people, maybe that not knowing the scope yet. But with that said, maybe some of those ancillary positions within Public Works will be good to have on board. Or
We
in
did.
person.
Yeah, I extended the invitation to the full staff. It's not just him, but to the full department, anybody he thinks should come.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would imagine that Mark is going to probably bring the entire team in for those specific questions. I know that from past study commissions, at least when I was at department end, that's what I did, because I didn't know what I was doing, but the people who worked for me did. So it was good to have them there. And so they will bring in, I think, their supportive staff just to give any specific questions that they have.
He likely needs more lead time in that, especially if he's going to want to try to rally the other people that work with him, because I know what it's like to try to get 6 people together, and it's a nightmare. So I trust that you'll send out those emails again, set a calendar for them to go through and maybe make some phone calls, and then we can. Public Works might just have to move to the end of the month, which is fine, and maybe we can knock out a few other departments next week if there's some folks that are willing. Subcommittee question. This question subcommittee. Is there any work that needs to happen, or you think you feel good with what we have in questions now?
I think some of the departments, even though they're all city-county, I think they're all different. Some of the questions that we have will suffice, but also at the same time, I think after they answer them, we can probably ask the questions then. So I think the questions that we have will work. We'll just have to ask as we go.
Excellent. I think that worked well tonight. And if you trust me to keep us moving, I will do that. Looking ahead at questions that I think we blend together and whatnot, then I think we should be okay with our follow-up. Mr. Silk, you had a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. One of the topics that we talked about when we met last week that Kim mentioned was kind of leaving it up to the director of that department to bring who he would want. They know the department better than us, right? So whether you have a new person that is in charge of roads or a new person that Mr. Neary might understand better than anyone else. So we kind of left it up to the director to ask his staff instead of individually going out, making it less targeted again from the commission to go out and do that. And then on another note too, if there's some of these smaller departments, we probably could do a hybrid system where, yeah, Mark's going to take up one night what works for him. It just goes along with Ms. Casey, what she's mentioned. And then if there are 3 departments that we can forecast that we can send them some dates, maybe we can lock those departments down sooner than later. So maybe a mix of everything here. Thank you.
Ms. Cohn, do you have what you need from us in terms of direction? Okay. Are there any other suggestions or concerns on that issue, or? Okay. All right, well, moving right along then. We don't have a public hearing tonight. Any other scheduled matters? Any public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of our commission? We have one more person here too. Okay. And how about announcements? We will be meeting every Monday at 5, except on federal holidays and St. Patrick's Day, which isn't a federal holiday, but it is here. So we won't be meeting on March 17th. And so if there is nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Dolan?
Yes, may I ask a favor? Right after we adjourn, I was making a list of media and outreach, and I just want to throw this list by everyone. Any other suggestions, I'll add to it, but if you could indulge me for like 2 minutes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Excellent. We will do that. And I think we had a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Anybody all in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you all. Shaw and a second, or excuse me, Dennehy moved and Shaw seconded.